Hello, and welcome to our exploration of one of history's most significant social transformations, the abolition of serfdom. Across centuries, serfdom prevailed as a deeply ingrained system of land-labor relationships, tying millions of rural peasants to feudal estates. Today, we'll take a closer look at what serfdom was, why it emerged, how it established itself across different parts of the world, and what led to its eventual decline. The term serfdom generally refers to a form of bondage, in which peasants known as serfs were bound to the land owned by local lords. It originated in the late Roman Empire and solidified during the Middle Ages. Under this system, serfs had limited freedom. They could not leave the manor without permission, and their descendants often inherited the same status. Serfs were charged with cultivating the land, paying dues, and providing labor services. In return, they were offered protection and the right to live on, and work a portion of the lord's estates for their own subsistence. Although this system was widespread, its nature varied considerably from one region to another. In Western Europe, changing economic conditions and evolving social structures led to a gradual decline of serfdom by the end of the Middle Ages. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, places like Russia and Poland, serfdom not only continued, but grew stricter. The peasant population in these regions faced harsh restrictions and heavy obligations for much longer, extending well into the modern age. By the 18th century, European intellectual movements and Enlightenment ideals began to challenge the very foundations of feudal society. Philosophers such as Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Rousseau promoted ideas of personal liberty and the social contract, undermining old, rigid hierarchies. Economic developments also played a major role. As commerce and industry advanced, the traditional feudal system could no longer compete with new market-driven models. Landowners and monarchs began to see the inefficiency of forced labor, recognizing that free peasants might be more innovative and productive. As workers or tenant farmers, one of the most famous instances of serfdom's demise was the 1861 emancipation reform in Russia under Tsar Alexander II. This reform declared that more than 23 million serfs were no longer legally bound to the land. They could own property, marry without permission, and even engage in local governance. However, the transition was far from seamless. Former serfs often received poor quality lands and faced high redemption payments that effectively bound them to debt. Still, this event remains a pivotal moment in modern history, inspiring further reforms and catalyzing social transformations across Eastern Europe. Elsewhere in Europe, the gradual abolition of serfdom took place as part of broader legal reforms spurred by revolutions, wars, and the growth of capitalist economies. Governments and aristocrats recognized that maintaining massive populations in bondage hindered progress, stifling economic development and fueling social unrest. Over time, with political fervor for civil liberties growing, it became clear that the structure of serfdom was unsustainable and morally questionable. Ultimately, the abolition of serfdom left profound marks on society. It propelled entire regions toward modern agricultural practices, free labor markets, and rising industrialization. Former serfs, once bound to the land for generations, could seek new opportunities, laying the groundwork for social mobility. However, the lingering effects like land inequality and economic disparities took generations to overcome. Many former serfs found it challenging to adjust to their new status, and the reforms often fell short of delivering true economic liberation. Even so, the end of serfdom was a monumental shift in human history. It not only liberated countless individuals from hereditary servitude, but also paved the way for more equitable labor practices, the expansion of civil rights, and the evolution of modern nation-states. When we talk about the march of progress and the pursuit of freedom around the world, few developments have influenced that journey more directly than the abolition of serfdom.